All right, Patreon members, tonight we have the privilege of having Mr. Will Elrick on with me. He is an author of many different books. The one specifically that we'll be referring to tonight is called Alabama Lore. So thank you for coming on. Will, do you mind introducing yourself a little bit more?
Well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Will Elrick, and I consider myself, or my business card actually says writer, adventurer, weirdologist.
Nice.
I study and research all different kind of weird things. It can be anywhere from cryptids to ghost stories to buried treasure.
Wow.
I've written 3 books so far, and all of them center around Alabama. I'm working on one for Tennessee currently.
Oh.
And I get all kinds of questions about it. I go to Bigfoot hunts. I go to ghost hunts. Before COVID, I used to speak at a lot of conventions and things like that. So,
Right.
Here I am.
Yep. Awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on. So, what I've been doing is, I figured that as an extra thing, we're starting at Alabama's the first state because of course alphabetical. You guys get it. But doing a thing where I interview an author, if I can get him, that's written about the state to do with cryptids, and also a researcher. So I was able to talk to Mr. Jonathan Odom.
Know Jonathan quite well.
You do? He's the nicest. He's such a nice guy. And his story, like, that guy has some crazy stuff happen. My goodness. Wow.
Did he show you any of his videos?
No, but I'm in his group and I've been watching some of them and they are wild. Oh man. It's just like the nicest guy. So let's get right to it. So when I want to start with Bigfoot. So what are the main Bigfoot things that Alabama might be known for?
Okay, so of course we have Bigfoot. We actually have Evergreen, Alabama, in Connecticut County is the Evergreen area is the Bigfoot capital of Alabama. But in addition to the Bigfoot, we also have what's called the Alabama White Fang. Fang being Thang, not Thing.
Right.
And it's been described multiple ways, but one of the ways it's often described as being an albino Bigfoot.
Oh wow.
So as far as with Bigfoot, those are our 2 basic versions there. You hear talk about the booger monster on occasion, but that's just like a regionalized name again for Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Oh, okay. So interesting. So it's like just kind of like a slang word for Bigfoot down in Alabama. Yes. Is a booger monster. Because I've heard wood booger before, I think.
Yeah, wood booger. There's some company on Facebook that has wood booger hats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think actually that was on the newest Finding Bigfoot. One of the dudes was rocking that out.
Okay.
So Evergreen, that's interesting. So it's called itself the Bigfoot capital of Alabama, huh? How did that happen?
Well, they have had lots of sightings down there, and several of the town leaders got together and decided that, with all the sightings, this needs to be the Evergreen needs to be the capital for Bigfoot of the state. A guy named Lee Peacock with the newspaper down there was kind of the man that led the push with it. And he actually got it ratified by the city council, and then they got it ratified by the state of Alabama. That's the official Bigfoot capital of the state.
That's amazing.
Now, several other states have followed suit and have their own Bigfoot capitals, but Alabama was the first officially certified by the state.
That is awesome. So if you go to Evergreen, is it a thing where like you can go to have like a museum or like a big Bigfoot store or anything cool like that? Or what do they have going on?
Well, Evergreen's a pretty small town. And like I said, they're most known for Conecuh sausage, which is real big here in Alabama.
Oh, okay.
They do have a Bigfoot statue at least. And every year they have a festival and they have their Bigfoot calling contest. It's not in a Bigfoot festival, though, which I believe they're working on prior to COVID at least. But they do have their Sasquatch calling contest every year.
Oh, that is cool. I like that. Is Evergreen kind of higher up in the state, or is it lower? Or?
Actually, Evergreen's kind of lower, almost in the east-west middle of the state, maybe a little bit to the west. but it's more in South Alabama. We don't have lots of woods, no mountains like we have here in North Alabama.
Oh, okay. So North Alabama has some or some mountains going on.
Yes, we're actually in the lower end of the Appalachian chain.
Oh, okay.
Goes all the way down to just past Anniston, Alabama, where
Oh,
we have our mountains.
interesting. Interesting. So you say that you have actually gone out on Bigfoot hunts before?
Yes, I've been out on at least 10.
That's
I've been trying.
awesome.
Jonathan and I have tried to meet up several times to do one, but we live in different parts of the state, so it's kind
Oh
of hard.
yeah, sure. Um, he had told me the story about the woman he heard screaming out in the woods. And I think that's the video he just posted up, and you can hear the audio of it, and it is horrifying.
Yes, it's.
If I had heard that, I
on
would have been
the
like,
other day.
"Yep," it would have been like, "I'm out of here, dude." It's man, wow.
You know, it's very funny. My most recent one, I've been talking with the guy. I haven't gone out there yet just because of the weather, but he's actually in southern Tennessee, but he has national forest on 3 sides of his property.
Oh wow.
And he's been having trees bent over. He's had the stacks of woods. He's had the feeling like somebody's watching him. So we're going to be getting
Wow.
up there as soon as the weather gives us a little something.
Okay. Oh man, that would be something else. Have that happen on your own property. Um, have you found that there is certain areas of Alabama that are more well known for Bigfoot activity than others?
Well,
Any hot?
Evergreen, like I said, they are really well known.
Okay.
It's funny. One of the biggest places there sightings occur is around Murder Creek. What
Murder
a great
Creek.
name! That's the
Whoa.
actual name for the creek. Uh,
Ooh.
but then we have our fair share here in North Alabama, also down in Blount County, which is south of Huntsville, Madison County, where we're at here, and then all the way over to Mississippi border. There's lots of reports of Bigfoot, especially lots of reports of the Alabama whitethang in the northwestern counties.
Interesting. So talking about the Alabama whitethang, is this a thing where is it different than other Bigfoots you might think of? Like let's say if you're thinking of Patty from Bluff Creek in California, or is it
I
is
don't know
it
if I've
different?
figured that.
um I hear sometimes that it has like a very like almost a scream to it. Is that right?
Well, the Alabama whitethang is actually what everyone describes as its appearance. Uh,
Ah,
you can definitely feel its presence there. I had one gentleman who was a deer hunter, and he was in his tree stand looking across the field, and he saw it come out of the wood. He said it was like a Bigfoot that was on 4 legs, but it was bright
whoa,
white.
really?
When it stood up, it was about 10 feet tall.
Wow.
And then I actually have another very close friend of mine who may actually be watching this. I told him I was going to be on. I sent you a text a few weeks ago, described this thing. He said it was almost not white, it was almost a tawny color, but it's unlike anything he had ever seen before. And I said, high possibility that's the Alabama whitethang.
Wow. That's awesome. That is very, very cool.
And speaking of Bigfoot and sightings,
Yeah, yeah.
here in Huntsville, well, I now live north of the city. In Huntsville, they have the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, which is home to Space Camp. And one of the
Oh,
sightings
yeah.
in my book I talk about is a guy that saw a Bigfoot right outside the Space Camp. He was staying in the
Really?
Marriott Hotel. He was out on his balcony, and the Space and Rocket Center is on the backside of Redstone Arsenal, which has lots of woods in there, unimpeded woods also. And the guy had a very long description of how Bigfoot stepped out of the wood line. It looked around, it sniffed the air,
Whoa.
stood out there for a few minutes before going back in. And that's right outside the largest tourist attraction in the state of Alabama.
That is so crazy, man. Space Camp. I'd totally forgotten about that. That's a memory from childhood unlocked there for sure.
Did you get to go?
No, It's just one of those things where if you grew up in a certain time period, I have a feeling you were like, oh, I wish I could go to space camp because it was so amped up, right?
Yes.
But man, so what else? What other cryptids do we have going on down in Alabama? Anything else people are looking for? Or?
Yes. Well, we've had lots of reports of a dog man, especially over in
Wow.
Bankhead National Forest. I've interviewed tons and tons of people because he's going to be in my next book.
Oh, cool.
Is the Alabama Dog Man. And one unique thing about him is he centers all of his activity around this abandoned church in the National Forest. But he will never go in the church. Several people have gone into the old church seeking safety, and he's not come in. Now, I have been out there. The church is interesting because it's got sand around a lot of the plots.
Okay.
And we got a very weird track imprint in the sand on top of one of the graves.
Really? Oh, that's crazy.
I've never seen anything like it before. Small and not shaped like your traditional Bigfoot footprint would be, but weird enough, and it wasn't a bobcat or a cougar.
Okay.
And it wasn't a bear. I know bear tracks too.
Yeah. Were you able to get like a rough estimate of how long it was, or?
We took pictures. We weren't expecting. We weren't looking for it. We just kind of stumbled across it. So all I did was take pictures of it.
Okay, cool.
I was an unprepared researcher.
And then that's the one. Yeah. Then I will always learn my lesson. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
You only mess up once, but yeah, I get it, man. So it's in the middle of a state forest and there's an abandoned church.
Yes.
Ooh.
That's not uncommon here. Having a small country church is very common in the state of Alabama. Even more common than that is abandoned cemeteries you just stumble upon in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I grew up in New England, and it was you'd be walking through the woods, and I used to track a lot of animals with my dad, and you'd stumble upon cemeteries and like rock walls. That's the weirdest thing, man. Just like abandoned towns. It's very weird.
And that's another thing Alabama has is abandoned towns aplenty also. So it's just when you think of Alabama, everyone typically has a image that comes to their mind. We have lots of nature here. Huntsville has the largest percentage of doctorate degrees per capita of anywhere in the country.
Oh, wow.
And there's lots of science, missile defense things going here in Huntsville, but there's lots and lots of nature around Alabama outside of Huntsville.
Okay. That's cool. And
if you want to hear about another Bigfoot hunt, which is kind of one of my favorites.
Yeah, totally.
Gentleman contacts me. He says that he was out fishing in his boat, and he felt like Bigfoot was or something, not Bigfoot, was staring at him from the woods.
Oh, man.
And it was in like a little slough, which means there's water, but three sides there's little put-ins or little banks. And he said you'd hear it move and then stop, and then it was like it was watching you again.
Whoa.
I went out there with him. We went out there in his little boat, and you could just feel the silence that was there. Man. We did get around in the woods pretty well. We found lots of pushed over trees, found a couple of dry footprints, or that we took to be dry footprints, and a lot of the natural wood stacking that they've been prone to do.
Yeah, definitely.
But we went at a different time of year than he had experienced, just because you couldn't get in there because of high water levels. So that was really one of my favorites to do.
Wow.
Was that one. And then I was one night, and we heard the screams. Very not as good as Jonathan's recorded, but they were pretty terrifying. That was a night of a supermoon, as a matter of fact.
Oh, man, no way.
And it was right around the lake shore, and it woke me up. I looked up, and all I could see was the moon. It was super bright. And of course, I thought it was coyotes.
Right.
Then it did it 2 more times, and it wasn't coyotes because I was awake this time listening to it. So that's my thing with the screams. And
Wow.
not also supposedly, or thought I heard the knock, the.
Oh yeah,
that they do.
totally. Yeah.
So
Oh man.
I don't know. That's my closest encounter was that one.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, personally, so I got into this because I was bored when last March when COVID started kicking in. I got really
We
bored,
all
but
were.
it's like it just happened. But someday, definitely want to attempt to go out and do some stuff. And yeah, I can't imagine being in your situation where you hear screaming and stuff like that. Like that's wild.
Right. You'll hear a lot of stories from campers
Mm-hmm.
That heard these things. They just think they're part of nature because people that don't go outdoors or don't have interest in this kind of thing don't necessarily know what they're seeing or hearing when they go into
Right.
these things.
Right.
And if you don't know what you're listening for, it's very easy to mistake one animal call for another, especially the coyotes we have here in Alabama, because they can mimic or change their voices so much depending on their call.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's wild. I remember the first time I heard, I think it was a screech owl when I was a kid out in the woods. Man, I don't know if you've heard screech owl before. That
I
stuff,
have.
those things are wild, dude. Yeah, those animals can do some weird stuff. Birds too. I've had a lot of people that have been asking me, do you mind talking about something called Hugging Molly?
Hugging Molly.
Yeah.
He is a great Alabama legend.
Okay.
In Alabama, we have a company called Yellowwood, and they make a lot of pressure treated lumber products. Where
Yeah.
the owner of Yellowwood has a restaurant dedicated to Hugging Molly down in Abbeville, Alabama.
Oh, wow.
And realistically, Hugging Molly goes back to the stories keep kids inside at night and not out causing trouble, because she dates back to the late 1800s. But supposedly, if you're out after dark and you see Hugging Molly, she's going to hug you so tight that she kills you.
Oh,
And
man.
it's a cautionary tale to keep kids at home. But she's great. In my book, I actually am out of stock of my book, so I wanted to have one here to reference.
That's a good sign,
I
though.
had written a song about Hugging Molly, and I included his lyrics in the book.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, she's one of the most famous ghosts of Alabama.
Yeah, that's a weird tale.
Yes, it is. There's several different variations as to what she came from. One says she is a woman that had a golden arm, and when she died, we came back and dug up her golden arm, and her spirit haunts the town of Abbeville, waiting to get her golden arm back. And then lots of it is just that she is a woman who lost a child, and that's why she tries to hug them to protect them, but she ends up killing them.
Oof, man, crazy. If
you want to talk about ghosts, here in Huntsville, we have probably what is the most known haunted thing here in Alabama, called the Dead Children's Playground.
A children's playground?
The Dead Children's Playground.
Dead children. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is Maple Hill Cemetery. Is the oldest, largest continuing operating cemetery in the Southeast. It dates back to right around the 1816 time frame. In some ways, it's actually older than the state of Alabama itself is. But right outside the cemetery in today's world, there's an old quarry, and set down in this quarry, only about 5 feet below the cemetery level, is this weird playground. And people say if you go out there at night, you can see the swings move back and forth. I mean, everyone knows someone that has an experience at the Dead Children's Playground.
Oh, jeez.
And the initial thought is that it's just kids that are buried in Maple Hill Cemetery. But another thought is 1918 when the Spanish flu hit
Oh
the
yeah.
entire world, but it hit very bad here in Alabama. Matter of
Okay.
fact, it killed all but four of the area doctors.
Whoa.
Uh, and I got to interview the son of the man who was the health officer during the flu. And it was so bad that you'd catch it in the morning, you'd be dead by night. And he
What?
had pictures of one of our downtown streets with bodies just stacked up on porches, waiting to be
Oh
cleaned.
my goodness.
They
That makes today
implemented
look like a cakewalk. Man.
implemented a town curfew,
Mm,
and it was really bad. And of course, as we know, the Spanish flu really hit the younger kids much harder than
yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
Uh, and a lot of those are buried in Maple Hill and in the Pauper Cemetery, which is also Maple Hill at the time. And supposedly it's their spirits that are out there playing on the playground.
Oh man. Have you gone there yourself personally?
I've been up there many times. I actually used to have a trolley tour that went out there to Maple Hill. And one night we're on the trolley and we pull up. It goes deathly quiet because all the swings are dead still except for one that's moving
Oh
back.
no. Oh, and you can just hear it creaking or something.
Well, we were in a trolley, so you couldn't hear it. But people
Okay.
that have been out there and they report hearing kids run around playing. There's
Yeah.
even a kind of freaky little song that kids would sing back in the Spanish flu time that people report hearing, and at another place in Huntsville where they are where the Spanish flu hit real bad.
Oh
It's
man.
a jump rope song to I had a bird, its name was Enza. I opened up the window and influenza as a
Oh
way
man, no way.
to
Ooh,
remind kids to keep the windows shut.
that's
We've had
intense, dude.
reports of that. Uh, and anytime you have a place that's really haunted or is known to be a big haunted hotspot,
Yeah.
the Huntsville police patrol it regularly because there's always reports of people go down there and do voodoo spells. Covens of witches come down there and leave things.
Oh
Uh,
boy, really?
yeah, go down there all the time and find pentagrams and all kind of things like that.
They get what?
Dead children's playground.
Oh yeah. Um man, so that's weird because it's like you only think of that stuff in Louisiana. Like, so I remember I'm thinking of the area down there from like the other part of the US, like up in Iowa. So I'm like thinking of the whole stereo. Like when people think of Iowa, it's like, oh, it's all Field of Dreams, right? No, it's not.
Right.
But when I think of like voodoo and stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, Louisiana, totally. But so you have to deal with that down in Alabama too.
We do. And believe it or not, the
Wow.
entire Appalachian chain has their own form of voodoo that's kind of practiced by the hill country people.
No way.
Like so, we're the lower end of the Appalachians here, but it goes Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, and Virginia. The backwoods and the mountains can be a scary, superstitious place.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Is there a special name for it, or is it actually just called like voodoo?
It's called voodoo.
Okay. That's right.
And then, in South Carolina, in the swampy areas of South Carolina, they also have different forms of voodoo also.
Yeah. That's crazy. You mentioned that you're working on a book about Tennessee. So why the focus on Tennessee? Just curious.
Well, it's actually a follow up to my Alabama Scoundrels book that
Oh,
my
okay.
wife and I co wrote together.
Okay.
So, uh, typical thing, same thing as Alabama, people that were bad in the history of Tennessee. It's very, very odd. I just last week finished the section on the Night Riders of Reelfoot Lake when a guy put two people out there at Reelfoot Lake. That was a little bit on the weird side.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. Oh man. Oof. It makes me think about Alabama in a different light, man. Like Jonathan had
Alabama,
said, yeah.
we have a very big Native American heritage here also.
Oh, really?
We
Okay.
have lots of Indian mounds. We have Moundville. One of the other things I'm working on for the upcoming Alabama book, that I'm also working with the Dog Man, is the Native American giant.
Ooh,
And they were supposedly a race of indigenous people that were 8 to 10 feet tall. And supposedly they're buried in these different mounds throughout the South.
Wow. Yeah.
And you can actually Google, if you Google them, you'll find out that the Smithsonian actually made records of these people when they were doing studies in the 1800s.
Wow. It seems like there's so much information out there. Like that book could be pretty, I mean, that could be quite the undertaking, really. It seems like a rabbit hole to go down.
Well, on that one, what got me kind of started on it was a newspaper clipping I had found in the archives from 1892 of a man who was over 10 feet tall that the townspeople chased. And he just sprung across the creek and got away from him because he was so big. Called him the Blount County Giant. I'm sorry, the Jackson County Giant.
You know, it brings up an interesting question. So when you're doing this research, getting all these stories together and these legends, do you find it more effective to actually like maybe go and read old newspapers, or is there a lot of oral tradition involved where you're talking to people?
I have a multi-tiered approach to it. I start kind of with the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, I have a step before. I start with things I've heard about in some capacity, like the Jackson County Giant. And then I go to the internet. And, you know, everyone thinks internet answers all your questions. It does not, because there's lots of things in the county archives or state archives haven't been digitized yet, or they were only on microfiche, and they'll get around to digitizing it whenever. Then I go that route. Then I go out and visit the places. Every place I've written about, I've hauled my butt there.
That's awesome.
To be there. Yeah. Then when I'm there, I try to set up and interview people. And a lot of times, a lot of the places you go, I mean, we have a few here in Huntsville or Mobile at the USS Alabama or things like that. Most of the places I go tend to be little back road spots.
Yeah.
Like Bankhead National Forest. Go up there, you may run into the occasional hiker, but the people that live there are few and far between.
Yeah.
So I kind of just take all that together, and then I craft my stories from there. And I always try to make a story in a book like a story I can tell. I love to tell stories. One of my favorite things to do is to tell these stories orally. And that's why I love speaking at the conventions or the historical societies and stuff. Because I love to share and get people's reactions and things like that. So I try to make what you're reading in the book like I'm telling you the story about it.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. You mentioned that you're into, I can't remember the exact way you put it, but you're into the weird, definitely. I think
I'm the weirdologist.
That's it, weirdologist. Yeah, totally.
Matter of fact, let me reach up here.
Go ahead, yeah.
And I don't know if you can see that there.
Oh, it actually says weirdologist. That's awesome. He's got a placard for his desk that says Will Elrick, weirdologist. That's amazing.
Yes. And it's funny. I'll back up here again. Right here, you'll see that little monster. Yeah. Anytime I do an autograph, I do that little monster.
Oh, that's amazing. Is that the white thing?
I just call him my little monster.
Just a guy. Okay. That's great.
But I was actually on a radio show that was kind of popular. So that little monster, in some ways, is more famous than I am.
Oh, awesome.
Because we were talking about it on the radio show, and people, you know, with social media, sometimes something just catches, and
yep,
there it goes.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm a weirdologist because everyone comes to me with their weird question.
Once you're the guy, then it's like it's game over. You've got people coming at you from everywhere.
Right. And I don't know how some of these people even find me a lot of times. I've gone and investigated swamp monsters that live behind a lady's house. investigated Bigfoots that wore Hawaiian shirts down in Florida.
No
I've just
way.
been contacted about so many different things.
Oh
That
man.
weird all just is kind of stuck.
That I think that's pretty fitting. What would you think? What's the weirdest adventure that you've had when you've been looking for stuff?
Okay, so we were doing a ghost investigation one night
Okay.
at used to be the gymnasium for a big mill village,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in there. And it was one of the spookiest ghost investigations I've ever been on.
Oh boy.
Uh, and one of the mediums that's leading it says, "Give us a sign," and always someone just hear, crash, and we're
No
all looking around.
way.
And we don't know what it is.
Really?
Come to find out,
Oh,
that crash was someone on the road outside, crossed 4 lanes of traffic, hit the telephone pole outside the building we were
what? At the same time?
in at the almost the exact same time.
Whoa, dude.
Then, from the same investigation, when you do a ghost investigation, not so much now, audio recordings come around so much,
Yeah.
but one of the people who came to my house said, "You've got to listen to this." I said, "What is it?" It's from the other night, but I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
So I listened to it. I was like, "Holy crap!" So I had to go back and find my video camera, which we still use mini DVs at the time. In the video camera, it's so long
Oh
ago
yeah,
this
sure,
was.
sure. Yep.
The tape was still in there, hadn't been messed with at all, and I could hear it on that tape also. And uh, what it was is you could hear the sound says, "Look at me," and then
No
you hear me
way.
say to the lady named Kara, "Kara, did you say that?" Because she was on the female there,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "No." I said something. I said, "No, did you say look at me?" And the entire thing was picked up on the tape recording and the video recording.
See, that's awesome because usually with stuff like that, it's like you don't. It's not like you get a recording of someone saying, "Oh, did you hear that?" Like
Right.
it's yeah, that's pretty cool. That's cool.
Another good one was also from a ghost investigation. We were doing a local radio station,
Mm-hmm.
and we had cameras set up all through the things like we do. And one of them had a camera shooting down a long hallway with there was an exit sign at the end of the hallway you could see on the camera. And all of a sudden, you just see like a blacker colored blackness coming down the
Whoa.
hall, and the camera shakes and falls.
Whoa.
Same night, shortly thereafter, we had all been doing what we call an EVP session or electronic
Yeah.
voice phenomena
Yep.
session. One of the offices, well, my team gets up, the two DJs that had the office get up, and we all walk out, and then something glowing follows us right out the door.
Oh no way.
Those are two of my scarier ones.
Yeah, dude. I don't know how I'd feel about that, man. Yeah.
But if you want to go back on cryptids for a minute,
Yeah, sure.
so we talk about Bigfoot. Bigfoot's a
Mhm.
big dude, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But in Alabama and across the nation also, because they're real big in Native American lore, puckwudgies.
Oh,
You
totally,
heard of
dude.
the
Yeah.
puckwudgie?
That's a great
Puck,
one, man. Yeah.
puckwudgies are little people of the forest. And
Yep.
here they are what's called the Piedmont area of Alabama, which
Okay.
is down around the national forest and the state park down there, and they are said to roam the woods and even kidnap children on occasion if you ever come across them. We literally in Alabama go from the smallest of the ones, which can be anywhere from a foot to 2.5 feet tall, to the largest, which being Bigfoot or the Alabama white thing.
Wow. Do they follow? So I've talked to another gentleman about puckwudgies before, and it's funny because when you usually look into them, you're like, oh, Southeast Massachusetts, but then it's like what he said backs up what you just said. He's like, no, it's actually all over the U.S. and you're talking about it in Alabama. So he's like, yeah, it's 100% right. But have you found that it's like he was saying there's stories of like sometimes they will like follow you home and they'll start messing around with you or
I've heard
get kind
that.
of weird.
I've heard that. I had a lot of difficulty finding people that had an experience with pukwudgies.
Okay.
One radio host, though, a gentleman called in his program one night talking about seeing one on the side of the road.
Wow.
But I actually went to college at Jacksonville State University, which is down in the Piedmont area.
Sure.
In my book, we call them Piedmont pukwudgie because that's where
nice.
where they are. But in other states, found lots of different things that they would follow people home. They would move stuff around outside their house. They'd make different little markings around their house. Native Americans believed in them for forever and a day as little people of the forest. And going back to Native Americans, the Cherokee Indians had 13 different words to describe Bigfoot. There's a museum in Georgia, I'm sure you talked about it before, called Expedition Bigfoot.
I'm totally aware of it's on the list. Eventually I want to talk to the dude. But yeah, that is definitely one of the top I would say like Bigfoot museum roadside attractions right now in the US.
I especially like the way that it handles the Native American belief in Bigfoot.
Oh, nice.
They have even last time I was there, at least, they had a nice animated movie that talks about how Bigfoot assimilated with the tribes, but then was relegated to being the creature in the forest, and how he became big and hairy. And it's a good museum to go and visit if you get the chance.
Yeah, totally. There's a whole list of stuff we gotta check out. It's definitely on the list.
Man. Right. Blue Ridge is actually in Cherry Log, Georgia, but right next to Blue Ridge, which is more famous. It's only about 2 hours away from where I'm at. As the crow flies, I mean, we're on the same mountain chain and everything.
Oh, wow.
As they are, so very similar territory here as it is there, and they have lots of experiences there. And one of the good things they have there that I like is they're talking about Teddy Roosevelt describing and running with Bigfoot,
totally,
which is, I'm a big Teddy Roosevelt fan, so I really love that setup too.
That just always blows my mind how it's like there's a whole Teddy Roosevelt Bigfoot thing. It's like, how crazy is that? Or like, there's a quote where like Lincoln is talking about giants, right? Is that a thing?
Right.
Or is that one of those fake ones? I don't know. But
I don't know. I've looked at it for my giants part of my book. So
okay.
I'll update you in the future. How's that?
Yeah. We'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Oh man, this has been super fun. This extremely good overview of the cryptids of Alabama, I think, and also definitely more. Thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with us for a bit.
Thank you for having me. I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys. And
I do have one more thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Sorry.
Came up.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books, 7 Years in Tibet. They made a movie about it with Brad Pitt. But anyways, it's from post-World War II days when the Russian mountain climber got stuck and had to go into Tibet to survive the war. Well, I've read it many times over the years, but I revisited it now, and he has a part in there where they're talking about finding Yeti tracks, abominable snowman tracks, in one of the most famous travel works of all time. Wow. That's awesome. So I just thought that was a neat thing to bring up about
totally. Can you do you mind spending a few minutes of like if the listeners want to keep up to date with what you're doing and the new books that you're coming out with, what's the best way for them to keep up to date with you?
Well, for several times I've tried to do my website, and I just can't devote the time to it. My mind doesn't work that way. It's
a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah.
Most people find me on social media and follow me on social media.
Okay.
My wife, she's a journalist for, it's called A Southern Thing, AL.com, which is a big website here in Alabama for news.
Nice.
she and I have written some books together. I do guest writings for her and stuff, but that's where the most find me is at, on her website at kellykasich.com,
Okay.
or just Will Elrick on Facebook. I have tons of people that I really don't know in real life that follow me, and I've got one. I'm going to call him about my name. His name's Doug Lovell. Great guy. When I did the ghost walk, he would come to all my ghost walks. He's bought all my books, comes to all my book signings, and it's just a fun, interactive way. You know, we had snow here today, so I had to go out and get some Bigfoot in the woods pictures today.
Yeah, right.
That I'll be posting soon.
Nice. That's awesome. Oh man. Will, thanks so much for coming on and hanging out tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I love doing things like this. And, you know, like I said, in the time of COVID, my face-to-face interactions with people was kind of really going down.
I know. It's
great
totally
to do
right.
these things.
Have a good one, man.
Thank you.